Welcome, everyone. This is Mary Vandenplas, Director of Operations and Research here at Burtch Works. Today, two of our senior quantitative recruiters, Linda Burtch and Katie Ferguson, will share the results of our 2019 Data Science and Predictive Analytics Salary Study. And now, a quick introduction of our speakers. Linda Burtch is an industry leader in the analytics and data science recruiting space and has dedicated her career to becoming a subject matter expert on quantitative hiring market trends. Katie Ferguson has over 10 years of experience recruiting analytics professionals and specializes in early career roles, and she helped to launch Burtch Works mid and junior level practice. Both Linda and Katie have been actively involved in the analytics community, participating in groups like the American Statistical Association and Forbes for years. And you may have also read some of their excellent insights on the Burtch Works blog. In the past several years, Burtch Works has been repeatedly mentioned in the popular press regarding analytics talent trends, including just this morning in Forbes, as well as in publications such as the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, InformationWeek, the Chicago Tribune, and Mashable. This year, Burtch Works was once again recognized by Forbes as one of America's best recruiting firms. And now, over to you, Linda and Katie.
Thank you, Mary, for that dazzling introduction. I know there was a reason that I hired you, so I'm just kidding on that. Thank you, Mary, for putting together the salary study, as she's done every year now for a number of years for us. She works night and day to pull this together. So, and welcome everybody. We had almost 500 people pre-registered for this event, so I hope everybody enjoys it. So, but let's get on with it. We have a bunch of topics to cover, and I think you will find a lot of interesting and hopefully helpful information and insights. Today's presentation, we're going to be covering highlights from our latest salary report, and that includes the hows and whys we have combined the data science and predictive analytics study. This is a departure of how we've been doing it from our past studies. Also, we're going to go into how these segments compare, demographically speaking. Then we're going to go into the 2019 salaries for both groups and how they've changed over the last year. Katie's going to take over at that point. And then I want to get into some of the insights that we've then gleaned from that information. And finally, talk about some of the key hiring trends that we've noticed this year. And then we're going to close with my very favorite part, which is the live Q&A. So don't be shy. Get your questions in. Before we get into the data, I wanted to quickly mention a few things about our reports. Believe it or not, this is our 7th year, and many of you have been following along for a number of years. I realized that there was no credible salary information on the exploding data science field, and that we here at Burtch Works were sitting on thousands and thousands of data points that could be really insightful for the community. So here we are. Each year the data has gotten richer and the insights have gotten more and more valuable. Our salary report is put together with annual salary information of individuals that our recruiters are personally interviewing. Now this contrasts with typical salary studies, which are gleaned from collecting human resources information from, let's say, a half a dozen or so firms in a pretty tight geographic area. Or there's also the way Glassdoor does it, which is through anonymous online surveys. I don't know about you, but I don't believe anything I read on Glassdoor. So it covers the country and it cuts across dozens of industries. Now we band people by 6 levels, and Katie's going to talk more about how we do that. And it is the most comprehensive salary study in the field that's available. And let me take a second and applaud my hardworking staff who really help to put this together every year for you. It takes a lot of effort. I'm also very proud to say that because of its comprehensive nature, countless firms have used this salary study over the years in order to establish their salary bands. So we released our first report back in 2013. But this is the very first year that we're going to be presenting data for the predictive analytics professionals and the data scientists alongside each other. So if you're wondering why we segment these two groups, we're going to be going over that in just a couple of minutes here. We've got some time constraints today, so this webinar will have only the highlights, but never fear for all you naturally curious data scientists. If you're looking for more information and analysis, be sure to go to our full report. It's over 50 pages, and it can be downloaded for free at burtchworks.com/study. So we all know, we've always regarded data scientists as a specialized subset of the predictive analytics professional. And our hope in presenting these two sets of data side by side, as opposed to in separate studies, which is what we've done in the past. We've presented one in June and the other in September. But what we want to do this year is to show some of the interesting comparisons between the two groups. Now, Burtch Works has typically segmented the data scientists and predictive analytics professionals because of skill set differences that have led to differing salary bands. But as I hope you'll see from some of this, some of the other data that we've highlighted here, there are many other differences besides just their compensation. All right, so how do we separate these two groups? Both data scientists and predictive analytics professionals are able to analyze data, glean insights from it, and then also, of course, prescribe actions for their organizations based on this information. Of course, they both have quantitative skills like modeling and so on. But the main difference, as Burtch Works defines them, is that data scientists' work focuses primarily on unstructured data, maybe streaming data, or complex volumes of data, while the predictive analytics professionals typically will use data that's more structured. And as a result, you often see data scientists that have a background in computer science, coding, and coding and programming, and whereas others, analytics professionals, may not have the same kind of depth that way. While both groups may come from a statistics or math background, they typically do, the data scientist is more likely to have studied engineering, maybe as an undergraduate or even through their graduate program, or computer science. While predictive analytics professionals are more likely to have come up through a business background or an quantitative business background or an economics background. We're also seeing newer programs popping up and more professionals using online courses or maybe boot camps to retrain or expand their existing skill set. So both may use a wide variety of tools to tackle their work. We've listed some of the common ones that we tend to see here. But there are, of course, many more, and there's more coming up all the time. Now, I want to pivot for just a minute to focus on the most commonly used statistical tools by this set of folks, Python, R, and SAS. Okay. Sorry about that. You're probably familiar with the flash survey that we do every year, SAS versus R versus Python. But if you're not, let me just give you just a quick synopsis. The survey asks data scientists and predictive analytics for their favorite tool between SAS, R, and Python for statistical analysis. Now, we only ask one question, and as a result of that, we typically get a huge response. And we usually get, for this particular flash survey, about 1,000 respondents, and they come in very quickly in something like 48 hours or so. We already know a lot about the candidate or the contact's background, so we know their where they live, what industry they're working on, how senior they are, and so on and so forth. So here is just sort of the top line analysis. You can see the 3-year trend for both predictive analytics professionals on the left and data scientists on the right. So predictive analytics support for SAS has stayed pretty steady for a number of years, with Python appearing to cut into R's usage, especially this last year. Now, data scientists have always favored the open source tools, so especially Python. And you can see here that SAS is barely a blip on the radar. Out of all the factors that we've analyzed in how data scientists differ from predictive analytics professionals, the most significant is this particular tool. 70% of data scientists favor using Python. So here's the summary of the results from last year. And you can see here that all three tools are neck and neck for the first time ever. Now stay tuned. The survey is coming out very shortly, and the results published later this year.
Linda, let me jump in. Mary told me this morning that she hopes to get the survey out within 2 weeks, so look out for that, and that we'll definitely have the results by the end of the summer.
Oh, good, good, good. Okay, and you know, I don't doubt that we're going to be taking some bets over here at Burtch Works on exactly how these numbers are going to turn out this year. It's always quite a lively guess, I guess, on where this is all going to go.
Well, I'm going to bet on Python.
So really quickly, and then I'll promise we'll then get on with the data. Here's some of the groups that this study doesn't include. So market researchers. Now we do recruit for market research professionals here, but they have their own study, and that is coming out in the fall. Software developers as well as data engineers. Again, we do recruit for those kinds of professionals, but they are significantly different, so we keep them separated. Also traditional MBAs, as most of the programs, the MBA programs, are not typically as quantitative, although I have definitely noticed a trend more in that direction. And then web analytics, as these folks are typically using tools like Omniture or Google Analytics, and they're not necessarily building advanced models. Now also we do recruit web analytics folks here also at Burtch Works. Business intelligence is another group, and they are more involved with reporting as well as infrastructure focus. So tools like Excel and PowerPoint, Adobe and Google Analytics or Tableau, while the data scientists and the predictive analytics professionals may use them and likely do, they do not by themselves qualify somebody in our sample. And now let's get on to the data. So Katie, take it away.
Thanks, Linda. I'm going to jump right in. First, let's start with our demographic analysis, where we'll show predictive analytics versus data science results side by side so you can compare. As you can see, many professionals with under 10 years of experience are in both data science and predictive analytics, but data science in the orange more so, especially with emerging technologies and so much hype in the field. When you compare data scientists to others in predictive analytics, there is a much higher prevalence of PhDs. About 40% of data scientists, oh hang on here, okay. About 40% of data scientists hold a PhD, while only 15% of their counterparts do. Here, let me give you guys a second to look at that slide. When we look at the area of study from the highest degree in each field, we can see that both have a significant amount of professionals coming from statistics and mathematics, with predictive analytics more so. But then we have data scientists more likely to have computer science or engineering degrees, while predictive analytics professionals are more likely to come from a business or econ background. The business category includes some quantitative MBAs, but many of these professionals have a master's degree in business analytics, which is a segment that has been growing rapidly in popularity. Another area we see a big difference between data science and predictive analytics is the industries where they're employed. Nearly 50% of data scientists are employed in tech. And this has been pretty typical over the last several years that we've been doing these reports.
And sometimes those companies can be referred to as digital natives too. So the way we describe it as tech or telecom isn't quite, I don't think that's we probably need to think about how we're labeling that.
The most common industries for predictive analytics employers are typically financial services, followed by advertising and marketing services firms. However, as use cases begin to spread out, we're seeing predictive analytics folks move to other industries. Gender-wise, men continue to dominate the quantitative fields, but as the chart indicates, the proportion of women is higher in predictive analytics than in data science. The predictive analytics number is pretty much on par with what you'd see in any STEM field. Now this slide is looking at the predictive analytics sample, but here you can see how the proportion of women shifts as experience and management level increases. We have individual contributors on the bottom, starting with 1 to 3 years experience, all the way up to managers, marked MG, with senior executives at the top. This is such an hot and interesting topic right now. Linda and I were actually just chatting before the webinar about a recent presentation that she did at Northwestern.
Yeah, it was really interesting. We took this information and did a deep dive to really dig into the gender differences and what kind of information we could glean from that. And we came up with a lot of really interesting insights. But just to highlight a couple, there are clearly more women now in the analytics field, but there are also more men. So as a percentage, it stayed pretty steady. It's creeped up a little bit, but it is slow. It's been slow. Now, you can see here at the bottom that women at the early career point are 37% of the cohort. And my expectation is that 37% is going to sort of boost up. More women will creep into some of these other levels as time goes on. So I think we're going to we're starting to see some more interesting numbers of women in the field. So I expect that that's going to continue.
All right, well, now the slides you've all been waiting for, the salaries.
And this is where everybody wakes up.
Once we've categorized someone as predictive analytics or data science based on the criteria that Linda outlined earlier, we classify them into one of 6 job categories. We'll refer to these throughout today's webinar, so I wanted to quickly review them. Many of you know this, but for those of you who do not, when we analyze our data, first we assign each professional to a job category as either an individual contributor, or as we abbreviate to an IC, or a manager, MG. And then we break these ICs and MGs into one of 3 levels. Individual contributors at level 1 are typically those in the first 3 years of their career. Level 2 professionals have approximately 4 to 8 years of experience, are hands-on with data, along with solving more advanced business questions. Level 3 professionals usually have over 9 years of experience and likely to help train and mentor analysts. And usually at this point, they're considered subject matter experts. For managers, we have 3 levels dependent on their primary function and the number of people they manage. So a level 1 manager is typically tactical in focus and manages approximately 1 to 3 direct reports, while level 2 leads a function or is responsible for executing strategy and typically has around 4 to 9 direct reports. And then managers at level 3 are the most senior leaders. They're at the executive level. They're responsible for determining strategy of their entire team, have P&L responsibility for their area of business, and likely to have 10 or more direct reports. So now let's see how salaries have changed for each group from our analysis in 2018. Here you can see the IC salaries for predictive analytics. which increased from 2 to 4% depending on experience. Predictive analytics manager salaries were mostly steady, though senior leader salaries increased by 4%. For data scientists, IC salaries were mostly unchanged from last year. You can see there was a slight increase for IC3s with the most experience. And data science managers increased anywhere from 0 to 3% from last year, depending on the size of their team. Now, as we mentioned before, one of the reasons we keep these groups segmented is because their differing skills tend to impact salaries. And here you can see just how much of a difference that can make. It's especially apparent among ICs, where the difference is anywhere from 19 to 34%, but the disparity becomes less pronounced among executives, where leadership skills tend to have more of an impact on salary than technical expertise. One interesting thing to note here is that data science ICs with 9 years experience can be paid quite well. So moving into management is not necessarily a requirement for a change in your paycheck at this level. And now Linda's going to chat about major trends and insights that she gleaned from the data. Over to you.
Thank you, Katie. Now, we wouldn't be good recruiters if we didn't share some of the hiring market trends that we've picked up recently. So let's get on to that. Whoops, sorry. Here we go. So we talk to hundreds of professionals and quantitative teams every year. So we have a really unique view of what's happening in the market from a super broad range of people across the country and different industries at different levels. And I have to say that is what makes our job really fun. So this is an observation that has been unfolding for a couple of years now. Open source tools and vendor-provided solutions have made what used to be a very complex and rigorous math and computer science problem into something that's more manageable and available to solve for a wider range of individuals. Now I would say that we are really far from point and click. These tools are maturing quickly, and this is having a positive impact on closing that talent gap in analytics. But let me just add and be clear that that gap is still very large. Data science and analytics initiatives have grown tremendously, as we all know. There are now opportunities across the country and across a multitude of industries, not just concentrated on the West Coast as it was 5 or 6 years ago. And this means that quantitative professionals have more options than ever. So options have become more technically diverse as more industries continue to mature and explore new potential use cases for their data teams. Now there's tech in agriculture, in education, law enforcement, weather, health. Health is really huge now. Energy is also very big, security, and much, much more. So we've seen interest wane in the early adapters of these applications, and I'm talking in this case about ad tech and e-commerce. And there's been a move toward more mission-driven roles that have some sort of societal or environmental impacts, such as using data to improve health outcomes or energy, or to support something that is not-for-profit. So quantitative teams have been increasing their size and scope, and many businesses are grappling with how best to communicate and coordinate between the technical team and other business unit stakeholders. This is a topic that's been around for years and years. So we've seen lots of companies staff up with the so-called data science citizen. Now we all know that there's a lot of translation that needs to happen between the quantitative team and other business unit stakeholders. So maybe with the marketing folks, the finance people, people in operations, and even up to the C-suite. Now this person that is the data science citizen is typically somebody that has an analytics foundation, who has sufficient technical depth, but combine that with the business acumen that is necessary to do that kind of translation work. Now, they're responsible for keeping the lines of communication open and assuring the tools and the insights that are coming out of the data science team actually get into operation. So these professionals, who may have a range of job titles, I consider them more to be the stewards of data science initiatives. They're there to free up the data scientists to do what they do best, which of course is the advanced technical analysis. Both types of roles are important to a successful quantitative team, and we're seeing more and more interest in these roles as the use cases for data science continue to expand. It's certainly no secret that the location of your data science team can either help or hinder your hiring efforts. We see many companies opening satellite offices in multiple urban areas to increase their roles' marketability. In particular, we have seen major companies in San Francisco continuing to expand their talent outreach with satellite offices as candidates continue to grow wary of the high cost of living in the area, and not to mention the high labor costs and the impact that has on employers. Now, this past year, we've gotten more and more requests than ever from California candidates looking to relocate for a more friendly cost of living area. As we've been talking about, there are now more educational options than ever to launch a career in data science. So now, technical screens and testing are more often required during the hiring process. Most quantitative professionals are still coming from the more traditional education backgrounds, such as master's or PhD programs that have been very well established. And but there are many new programs like this that are still relatively unknown and unproven. So also, many of the candidates have supplemented their skill set with online courses maybe, or boot camps in order to keep their skills up to date. So lots of hiring managers are looking for ways to better evaluate the talent that come with this wide array of educational backgrounds. And so many hiring managers are relying on testing to measure a candidate's ability. Now, I want to add, and this is for the hiring managers, that it's really important if you're using these testing methods to remember to keep the hiring process moving and keep the time commitments reasonable in order to be able to stay competitive in this hot market. We've seen many a candidate walk away from a prospective job because the testing time commitment is just too high. You know, another thing that we're finding is that companies are focusing more on data scientists that specialize in a particular area of expertise. Let's say like natural language processing, maybe computer vision, or even specific domain experience like ad tech, let's say, or IoT. And this is quite a change from what we've seen in the past. Of course, what this does, unfortunately, is it narrows the potential talent pool even more and makes that search much more challenging. So back in the day, and I'm talking about like 5 years ago, the market focused on finding that do-it-all unicorns. You probably all remember that. So somebody who could wrangle the complex data, then create the models, then write production-ready code, and then operationalize the whole thing. And of course, those kinds of candidates were no easier to find either. So I will say nothing has gotten easier for us recruiters. So there continues to be a strong need for leaders who have, of course, compelling leadership skills and a strong understanding of analytics. But things in technology are changing so fast that these leaders also need to be well-versed in new or emerging techniques, and also be able to be the one to identify new opportunities for the business. Now, it's really important to have a leader who can recognize potential use cases and really push what's possible in order for their business to succeed in today's ultra-competitive business landscape. Okay, so I think that about wraps it up for our data and trends analysis. I know that I say this a lot, but I think it bears repeating today. It's never been a better time to be in analytics for both you and for me. So thanks for joining us today. Now I'm going to pass things back to Mary, who has a few announcements before we get on to the Q&A.
Thank you so much for digging into that fascinating analysis, both Linda and Katie. And of course, if you're looking for more data and analysis, I highly recommend that you download our full study, where we break down salaries by quartiles, look at salary means as well as medians, examine salaries by demographic factors like gender and region, and much, much more. It's about 50 pages, and you won't regret downloading it. That's at burtchworks.com/study. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Burtch Works, we are an executive recruiting firm specializing in quantitative fields like analytics, data science, and marketing research. We're the leading resource for insights about the hiring market and produce comprehensive salary reports every year for our main specialty areas. These reports each contain 30 to 50 pages of data and can be downloaded for free at burtchworks.com/study. And if you're looking to add to your data science or predictive analytics staff, we'd be happy to speak with you and do some brainstorming about what you might have plans in terms of hiring before the end of the year. We offer contingency and retained services from entry-level analysts all the way up to chief analytics officer or chief data scientist searches. Feel free to send us an email if you want to chat, info@burtchworks.com. And of course, if you're looking to browse opportunities, you can visit our job board, which is visited by thousands of quantitative professionals every month. For more hiring market insights, check out burtchworks.com/blog, where you can find flash surveys on SAS versus R versus Python and preferences on what motivates analytics professionals to change jobs, as well as advice on resumes, interviews, evaluating job offers, and much, much more. To stay up to date on our latest research, you can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And on our YouTube channel, found at youtube.com/burtchworks, you can find recordings of our other presentations, including SAS versus R versus Python data analysis, 2019 predictions, and our immensely popular career planning webinar with tons of job search tips. And if you were intrigued by our SAS/R Python survey mentioned earlier, make sure to keep an eye on your inboxes, because our most popular flash survey will be returning in the next couple of weeks. This is our favorite survey during the year, and we can't wait to tally your votes and hear your comments this year. So please be sure to participate. And now it looks like we'll have time for Linda and Katie to answer a few of your questions. Please feel free to keep sending those in to the chat box on the left side of your screen. But let's jump right in. Linda and Katie, I've got a question about someone considering enrolling in a data science program and asking how to evaluate whether it's going to be a valuable program for their career. Any insights?
I think, Katie, I'll let you take this one.
Fair enough. That's a great question. We get that question all the time. I especially do. My first piece of advice, I guess all-encompassing, would be to do your homework on the program. I would make sure you're asking lots of questions, talking to the career advisor or the program coordinator. I would talk to current students, maybe ask to do that. I would talk to alumni if available. I'd look at the curriculum, and really what I would be gauging is it technical enough? Are they using the latest tools? Are they using R and Python? Things like that. And then I would also evaluate and look at, do they have established partnerships with companies? And then where have their alumni received jobs? Maybe you can check that out on LinkedIn. So just make sure that it's a program that is cutting edge, and because I know there's not a lot of data on some of these. So you're going to have to ask as many questions and talk to as many people as possible.
Yeah, it's a big time commitment. And expense, and so it's very important that you do your homework before you sign up for these.
Well, thank you so much for that. Another question I've gotten is from the hiring side of things. You mentioned companies opening satellite locations to attract talent. What areas are the best to open these satellite offices?
Right. Okay. We've seen a lot of growth out west. So Texas is a favorite place, so Dallas, Austin. We also see satellite offices in Denver. Certainly Chicago is a location too, where a lot of the East Coast firms will have folks, as well as the West Coast tech people, tech organizations. And they'll also go, the West Coast tech companies will also have, of course, their outposts on the East Coast too, either in Boston or New York. And actually Washington, D.C. is also pretty popular. So it's kind of scattered all over the place. I haven't seen as much in the Southeast, though, which kind of surprises me, but maybe that's developing.
I also think Chicago's become a little bit of a hotbed for Midwestern companies that want a presence, and that's really the easiest location. And
right.
So we've definitely seen that increase here at Burtch Works.
Yeah, especially if they're in a less urban area where they feel like they need to attract young technical talent. They'll open up a group here in Chicago.
All right, great. Another question from the hiring side of things, talking about implementing a technical assignment in our hiring process. Currently, they're looking at a assignment around 4 hours long. How do you think about that as far as length? Too long, too short?
I like this question. It's actually for both. I think, Mary, it can be for both sides because the candidates are certainly facing this issue.
Right.
This is tricky.
Yeah. 4 hours, I think, is borderline, getting to be too much. And understand a lot of these candidates, and especially the more junior people, are looking at multiple options, and they're working. So it makes it very difficult for them to sort of carve out, 4 hours here, 6 hours there. So it's really important, I think, if it goes beyond 2 hours, I think you're getting to the point where you're asking maybe a little bit too much. But what do you think, Katie?
Yeah, 2 points jump out. If this is someone maybe coming out of a master's or PhD program and you want to give them some sort of test or, I don't know, some sort of analysis, I think 3 to 4 hours is okay. I'm going to say that is okay if you've already spoken to them and feel they are a very strong candidate. I would not do that as the first, if you're not even interested, make them go through that. But for individuals that have experience, and usually if you have experience you might be juggling personal commitments and family, in addition to work, maybe a shorter test and then the ability to present some of their work would make sense. Work they've already done, they can always black out or cross out any proprietary information. So maybe some sort of combination would make sense. And then that way they know the work, they can explain it well. It won't take them much time to prepare for that.
Yeah. Some I've seen also during interviewing processes sort of a whiteboard exercise that a lot of our candidates really enjoy that because then it's more of a discussion as opposed to this sort of question-answer thing that goes on.
Okay, great. I think we're going to squeeze in one last question here. What kind of growth have you seen in the Chief Analytics Officer role in recent times?
Yeah, that's a good question, and certainly there have been a lot of senior level analytics roles. They're not necessarily called CAO though, so they might be at the VP level, they might be at the SVP level, but certainly they are in a leadership position. They're going to be the top person, analytics person within these organizations. Many times, too, the kinds of requests I get are for companies that are looking to hire their very first quantitative person. They want that senior level person that's going to be able to really figure out where the priorities are and also lay out a roadmap and build the relationships with the business unit stakeholders and and work at a very senior level to put that plan all together. And those are really interesting, fun jobs, but they're hard too. I mean, it's not for the, these kinds of roles are not for the faint at heart, because a lot of what they're doing is evangelizing the use of analytics, and you have to make sure that the commitment at the senior levels within these organizations is solid.
All right, thank you so much for answering those questions. Yeah. And we appreciate everyone who submitted questions today. That's all the time we have. But thank you all for coming. And if you want to download the full study, please visit burtchworks.com/study. And if you want to connect further with us, reach out to info@burtchworks.com. We would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.